Ma'am, with all due respect, stick to trimming the hedges. We're the Secret Service. We don't need advice from the gardening staff. The condescending words of Agent Thorne sliced through the crisp mountain air, sharp and arrogant. The small crowd of dark-suited agents exchanged smirks, their complicit silence forming a wall of dismissal around the woman in the faded work overalls. She, however, offered no reaction. Her face, weathered by sun and secrets, remained a placid mask of indifference. She simply gave a slow, deliberate nod, then turned back to her task, coiling a thick garden hose with a rhythmic, methodical precision that was almost hypnotic. But from the veranda of the sprawling estate, retired General Marcus Vance saw something else. He saw the woman's stance, not the weary posture of a laborer, but the balanced, rooted poise of a century. He saw how her eyes never truly settled on her work, but swept the dense tree line in a constant, unconscious scan. She wasn't just coiling a hose. She was mapping a field of fire. The general felt a cold prickle of familiarity, a ghost of a memory from a world of shadows and whispers. He didn't know her name, but he recognized her nature. If you believe competence speaks louder than titles, type silence below. Agent Thorne personified a specific brand of institutional pride, a brittle confidence born from a tailored suit and a visible earpiece. He commanded the security detail for the president's daughter, Chloe, at this secluded mountain retreat, and he moved through the world as if it were a minor inconvenience he was paid to tolerate. He saw the groundskeeper, this quiet woman named Anna, as nothing more than a part of the landscape, another variable to be managed and, if necessary, publicly corrected. Earlier, he had berated her for being too close to the sterile zone, while she was simply mulching the hydrangeas that lined the primary evacuation route. His voice was a tool of dominance, his corrections a performance for his junior agents. He mistook her silence for subservience, her unassuming presence for insignificance. He saw a middle-aged woman in muddy boots. He was blind to the coiled lethality that resided within her stillness. General Vance, however, saw the truth. He watched her hands, not just calloused from labor, but with a practiced economy of motion he'd only ever seen in the most elite echelons of special operations. Every movement was essential, stripped of hesitation. She was a ghost hiding in plain sight, camouflaged by the world's most effective tools, low expectations and ignorant assumptions. The day shattered in a symphony of suppressed rifle fire and splintering glass. The attack was surgical, sophisticated, and brutally fast. Communications were jammed instantly, the outer perimeter guards neutralized before they could even utter a warning. Thorne's team, so confident in their technology and their authority, was thrown into chaos. Their comms were dead, their protocols useless against an enemy that was already inside the wire. Thorne shouted useless orders into a silent wrist mic, his face a mask of disbelief turning to panic. While his agents scrambled for cover, the gardener, Anna, simply dropped her shears. In that one, fluid motion, a lifetime of placid anonymity fell away, replaced by an aura of chilling purpose. She didn't run from the gunfire. She flowed towards it, her body low, her senses ignited. She scooped the sidearm from a fallen agent, her hands moving with an otherworldly familiarity. The magazine was checked, the slide racked, the weapon an extension of her will in less than a second. Her eyes, no longer passive, were now cold, analytical instruments, calculating trajectories, threat vectors, and the geometry of death. The gardener was gone. Major Evelyn Reed was back on the clock. The president's daughter was pinned down, her life measured in the milliseconds between the impacts of automatic fire chewing through the wall beside her. Agent Thorne was frozen, his training and arrogance vaporized by the sheer violence of the assault. He was shielding Chloe with his body, but it was a gesture of futility, a last, desperate act before the inevitable. Then, from the manicured hedges Thorne had told her to trim, came the retort. It wasn't the panicked spray of a firefight, but three distinct, deliberate cracks. Crack, crack, crack. 3 shots, 3 silenced threats, each one a perfectly placed round that found its mark with impossible precision. A phantom in smoke-stained overalls emerged, using the very terrain Thorne had dismissed as her exclusive domain. She moved through the garden paths like a wraith, a blur of deadly efficiency. She neutralized 2 more assailants before they even registered her presence. Their own sophisticated tactics turned against them with contemptuous ease. She appeared at Thorn's side, a specter of cordite and soil. "This way. Now," she commanded. Her voice was low, calm, and absolute. The ensuing silence was more profound than the battle itself, a vacuum filled only by the stunned gasps of the surviving agents, and Thorn stammered, "Who? What are you?" From the reinforced safety of the main lodge, General Vance had seen enough on the monitors before they went dark to understand. As the echoes of the final shot faded, he strode out onto the lawn, his movements purposeful, his eyes fixed on only one person. He walked past the terrified agents, past the whimpering daughter of the president, and past the shell-shocked Agent Thorn. He stopped directly in front of the woman who was now methodically clearing a jam from a captured enemy rifle, her focus absolute. The general didn't ask for identification. He didn't need it. The impossible efficiency, the ghost-like movement, the legendary calm under fire. It all coalesced into a name he hadn't dared to speak in 15 years. "I knew it," he breathed, his voice thick with a reverence that bordered on awe. He turned to the bewildered Secret Service detail. "You have no idea who just saved your lives," he said, his voice ringing with authority. He pulled out a rugged satellite phone, its signal impervious to the local jamming, and made a call that bypassed normal channels, connecting him to the deepest, darkest vault in the Pentagon's archives. "This is General Vance. Authorization code Blackwood 7. Access the Spectre file. I need a status confirmation on call sign Chimera. Read, Evelyn. Major." The voice on the other end of the encrypted line was faint, but Vance repeated the words for the benefit of all present, each syllable landing like a hammer blow. "Unit designation, Spectre, Tier 1 Special Missions Unit. Officially acknowledged as disbanded." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "Combat deployments, redacted. Service history, redacted. Citations, Distinguished Service Cross. 2 Silver Stars. 5 Bronze Stars with Valor." He took a deep breath before delivering the final, impossible facts. All awarded posthumously. Status: killed in action, Zagros Mountains, 15 years prior. Declared legally dead by executive order. A wave of collective shock rippled through the agents. They looked from the stern, decorated general to the unassuming woman in muddy overalls, trying to reconcile the two realities. The gardener, the ghost, the decorated war hero who, according to the United States government, had ceased to exist. Vance ended the call and turned to face Major Reed. He didn't offer a handshake or a word of thanks. Instead, his back straightened, his hand snapped to his brow, and he delivered the sharpest, most profound salute of his 40-year career. "Major Reed," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "It is an honor, ma'am." Then, his gaze shifted to Thorn, his eyes hardening to flint. "Agent, you judged a legend by her coveralls. She judged you by your actions. Never forget that lesson. The story was never meant for public consumption. It was a wound too sensitive, a truth too dangerous to ever see the light of day." But within the closed circles of the intelligence community, the story of the ghost of the estate spread like a vital new piece of tradecraft. It became a whispered legend at covert training facilities, a cautionary tale told to new recruits in the Secret Service, a myth that carried a core of undeniable truth. They spoke of how an entire detail of elite agents, armed with the best technology money could buy, were saved by a woman presumed dead for a decade and a half, armed with nothing but a borrowed pistol and an intimate knowledge of the landscape. The name Evelyn Reed was never written in an official after-action report, her file remaining sealed under layers of classification. Yet, her legend did more to reshape security philosophy than a dozen official inquiries. It became a powerful reminder that the greatest assets and the most lethal threats are often hidden by the camouflage of ordinary life. Her silent, decisive action became the new gold standard for quiet professionalism. Agent Thorn was not fired. That would have required an official explanation that was impossible to give. Instead, he was quietly reassigned to a desk in a windowless room, tasked with reviewing archival security footage. The demotion was a quiet humiliation, a career-ending sidestep that allowed the institution to save face. But the man himself was irrevocably changed. The arrogance was gone, scoured away by the memory of his own freezing panic and her impossible calm. He was haunted by her competence. He spent his weekends at civilian firing ranges, trying in vain to replicate the steady-hand precision he had witnessed. Months later, a simple, typewritten letter arrived at the mountain estate. Addressed to the gardener, it contained no name and no signature. Only 3 short sentences. I failed to see. You taught me how to look. Thank you. Meanwhile, Evelyn Reed was gone. By the time the official recovery and investigation teams arrived, she had vanished as completely as she had appeared, leaving behind only the spent casings from her weapon and a perfectly coiled garden hose next to a spigot. The greatest honor they could pay her was to protect her solitude, to let the ghost return to the shadows, her duty done. The only physical evidence of her existence became a single photograph of the estate's garden, pinned to an anonymous, lessons learned bulletin board deep inside Secret Service headquarters. Years passed. At the Secret Service Training Academy in Laurel, Maryland, a new class of recruits stood before a tactical schematic of the presidential mountain retreat. The instructor, a seasoned agent with tired eyes that had seen too much, pointed to a narrow, overgrown pathway that cut through a dense patch of hedges. "We call this Reed's Alley," he said, his voice low and serious. He didn't tell them the whole story, not the parts about a ghost or a woman declared dead. He didn't have to. The lesson was what mattered. "We make assumptions at our peril," he told the sea of young, eager faces. "We are trained to look for the man with the rifle, the suspicious vehicle, the overt threat. But true danger, and sometimes true salvation, wears camouflage you will never expect. It wears a janitor's uniform. It carries a gardener's shears. It has a quiet voice. Your job is not to see what you expect. It is to see what is there." The legend of the ghost vet had become foundational scripture, a living piece of folklore that taught a new generation to value observation over assumption and competence over confidence. A true legacy is not a name carved into a monument or a list of medals in a display case. It is not measured in headlines or public recognition. A true legacy is the standard that continues to resonate long after its creator has faded from view. It is the invisible, indelible mark left by one's actions, a ripple of influence that shapes the future. Major Evelyn Reed was, by every official metric, a phantom. Her name was a ghost in the machine, a redacted file in a forgotten archive. But her spirit, the embodiment of quiet professionalism, of selfless duty, and of competence so profound it bordered on supernatural, was more alive than ever. It lived in the cautious eyes of a new Secret Service agent scanning a crowd. It thrived in the humble silence of a training room where assumptions were dismantled. She sought no credit and desired no fame, but her actions created a permanent echo, a silent, enduring lesson in the heart of the very institution that had forgotten her. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance, and where silent action defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Tales.